This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Well, how do you do? It is Election Day across many states, some 37 states in the country. Have you voted today? If you're one of them, welcome into the Chris Stigall Show podcast. I hope you have. Coming up today, we'll talk with some really smart, great, insightful guests. Mark Weaver is a former DOJ spokesman. He's a constitutional attorney, an officer of the court, and he has been one of the great analysts to get us through what is going to be multiple Trump trials. Yesterday, Trump and this judge locked horns. I have some thoughts about it, where I think Trump is trying to take this thing. I want Mark's analysis on it. He's going to give it. You're going to like it. We're also going to get into the economy with Steve Moore. We're going to talk also with Congressman Jeff Van Drew. He is the former Democrat congressman who 4 or 5 years ago flipped and went Republican in New Jersey. He also sits on the House Judiciary Committee that just released this huge report on the level and scope of censorship of you and me and a lot of names you would probably know in conservative journalism and media that have been censored. And we're working in coordination with Stanford University, no kidding, as well as the government and big tech. The level of censorship was stunning. So we're going to talk about that, what they found in this committee hearing with Congressman Van Drew. So a lot to get to. This is a heavy lift today because there's a lot to consume, and it kind of goes in some places. I won't lie. This conversation today, this show today, goes in some places that are a little tougher for me, and by that I mean tougher to talk about because I'm not a fatalist. I don't like going dark. I'm not an end is near guy. I believe God is still on the throne, and He's in control of every bit of this, and He's not surprised by any of it. So I'm not someone who despairs or panics, but it is probably fair to say that we've got to start having a discussion about where things could go in the next year, so we do that today. Meanwhile, John Ruhlman at usmedicalplan.com. He wants to save you money on health insurance. If you buy your own health insurance out of pocket, if you're a small business owner, if you're the head of a family, if you are an individual, you're a senior, you're retired, you're on a fixed income, maybe you're young like my son's first jobs, you don't have insurance, and you think, I don't want to spend money on insurance. Well, I would just simply say to that 18, 19, 20, 25-year-old, hey, kid, come on, man. It doesn't cost you anything to fully insure yourself, and if you, God forbid, should get injured or ill and you got to go to the hospital, like there are plans out there that pay you a salary while you're recovering. Seriously. And for young, healthy people, it's pennies, it's peanuts. Save hundreds, maybe thousands. I have a colleague that just saved $250 a month by calling John and his team at usmedicalplan.com. usmedicalplan.com or 877-410-4321. Sarah Silverman kind of hopes that Joe Biden might just die before the election. That's how bad it's gotten out there, folks, that the Democrats are now just hopeful that maybe instead of having a big argument or debate about will he run or won't he run or who should replace him, maybe he just won't wake up.
With the reason most of the people in this audience could not sleep well last night. A new poll shows Joe Biden getting trounced by Donald Trump in almost every single swing state. Don't panic. It's still too early to say Biden will definitely lose. He could absolutely die in his sleep instead. I'm just saying, this is really scary for liberals. And I mean actually scary, not like they took Hamilton off Disney Plus scary. But you know what? I'm going to be honest. I like a scary poll number. Puts a little fire under your tuchus. This is a wake-up call to Joe Biden. I mean, no, really. Joe, wake up.
Does she, this is unbeknownst to me, does Sarah Silverman do a show? I don't know that. Or is she guest hosting for somebody? Filling in for Kimmel or something?
Yeah, guest
or we don't know that.
I think it was The Daily Show.
Oh, okay.
I have to no, but they have been doing those guest hosts.
No, you know what? I think you're right. Because I saw a clip the other day of Charlemagne the God or whatever, And it looked like he was hosting The Daily Show. And I was like, when the hell did the black radio guy who talks about black stuff, when did he become The Daily Show host? And then it occurred to me that Trevor Noah, who was never any good or funny and nobody watched, left The Daily Show, didn't he? I don't even know. Do people even watch that anymore over there at the Comedy Network?
He did.
Okay. And so now that he's left, is that what they're doing? Just a series of rotating hosts? Maybe that's what that is. It doesn't matter. The point is, folks, the joke. Maybe he'll just die. We don't have to worry about Joe Biden losing to Trump. Maybe he'll die before the election. That'll take care of it. And by the way, this is good news. You know, this bad news for Biden, it's good news for we Democrats. It'll light a little fire under us. You know, wake up. No, literally, wake up, Joe. Wake up. And, you know, Rob Reiner, similarly, I don't know how much you follow Meathead. I do on X, just because he's entertaining. This guy, he's in orbit. Now, I don't know that he is the thermometer for all Democrats, but he's an active, highly partisan guy who pays close attention to the news that he likes. Now, we've known when he's had the debate and he's been forced to face truths on live television that he's never been faced with before that don't come from MSNBC. He's not very good on his feet because he doesn't consume anything that's not to his filter. I can't remember who that was, but it was pretty good. It was Bill Maher, I think. He was on Bill Maher's show, and Bill Maher actually reminded him, I think it was during COVID. It was during COVID deaths or something. And Rob Reiner had literally never heard information that was counter to what he believed. Neither here nor there. My point is, he's keenly aware of Democrat prospects. He pays close attention. And he's really upset yesterday about these polls that kept showing Biden down to Trump in major swing states. Like, he couldn't believe it. And he was really angry about this. He said any poll that doesn't factor in additional candidates to the ballot is bull excrement. Head-to-head, Biden will beat Trump. The bigger danger is additional candidates, and their donors know it. So he does not accept a head-to-head matchup between Trump and Biden as anything less than Biden being victorious. He says that these polls are all bull excrement because nobody is taking into account the fact that they support RFK Jr., who he does not want in this race. He's been very clear. He's called up RFK Jr. personally and said, if you do this, you will cost us the election and put Trump back in the White House. Don't do this, Bobby. And so far, Kennedy has been unpersuaded and is hanging in there as the independent. Reiner is convinced that Kennedy Jr. is the guy that's going to end this. And look, I got to be careful how I say this, but I would just say there's been serious discussion about the fact that Biden will not approve Secret Service protection for RFK Jr. And the way these people are behaving, the way these Democrats have now shown their willingness to do just about anything to win, I sincerely wonder about the safety of a guy like RFK Jr., particularly given his family's history. That's all I'll say. These people are fit to be tied about him. They're really worried. And they've shown I made a mistake yesterday, a rare mistake. I have to amend some comments. I said that so far, Hamas had the edge over leftists in this country because so far Islamo-supremacists have shown a willingness to slaughter people in ways the left in this country hasn't quite yet mobilized. That's not true. I misspoke. Actually, the left has shown their willingness to slaughter people. We saw that with the Bernie bro who opened fire on the Republicans playing baseball. And we've now seen it with the Nashville shooter and their ideology that drives murderous rages. A hate that drives slaughter is what the American left is all about. And it's something you ought to be very aware of. Somehow, Steven Crowder, a guy you may or may not know, he's been around for quite a while. He has quite a following. Louder with Crowder, I believe, is his show. He did it for a while with The Blaze, and then he tried to go over to the Ben Shapiro people, and the Ben Shapiro people and he were in some kind of dispute. And then he went public and made a big stink about how they tried to own him and he wouldn't be owned and they're cheats and weasels. And now the Ben Shapiro people are mad at him. This internecine digital media battle thing. I don't follow it enough, and I'm not particularly interested in it. I just know that in this, if you're on social media at all, and you go down in the rabbit hole of this thing, there's this internecine war constantly. Because as I was explaining to a friend of mine the other day, he said, are you not on Fox anymore? I haven't seen you on Fox lately. I said, well, I've been asked a couple of times. It hasn't worked out schedule-wise. I said, but I said to this guy, who's a little older, I said, you do know that, for instance, a video I shared on Instagram this week has already been viewed 5 million times. Now, I don't say that as a brag. That's not even big numbers to people who are really successful in the digital space. But the point is, on any given night that I would ever be on Fox, 5 million people didn't see it. You know what I mean? And so I was explaining to this guy, like, you don't get it. The new digital landscape is not cable. There's still some people that still think, oh, it was on Fox. It must be. Like, Fox is not where it's at anymore. And all due respect to the good people on it, there are many good people on it. That's not the sink or swim. Would I rather be, if you're going to invite me on a show today, you say, Stigall, you can be on with, and no disrespect to him or her, you can be on Laura Ingraham or Jesse Waters tonight, or Tucker wants to talk to you on Twitter or X. Now, Fast Eddie, which one are we picking if we have a schedule conflict?
We're picking Tucker.
Yeah, right, because people don't, there's still millions of you that you don't have an X account. You haven't seen Tucker since he went there. I respect that. There's still people, when I've left certain radio stations, I say, boy, I miss you on such and such station. And I'll look at them and I'll say, I do a show every day that you can download digitally. It's a podcast and you can hear me every day wherever you want, whenever you want. There are some people that just can't, that's beyond them. They don't want to learn how to do it. If it's not click, he's not on the radio at the time I'm used to, I don't want to learn it. I respect that. But my point is, in this new digital space, that's where everyone of a certain age and younger, they're all going. Appointment broadcasting is going by the wayside, and there is a great schism between the two. And so my point in telling you all this is there's been this sort of gold rush, this land rush in the digital media space for eyeballs and ears. And I know a lot of you you're not in there, so you're like, I don't care. If it's not on the TV or it's not on the radio, I don't want to watch it or listen. But you should know, right, Fast Eddie, that this guy Crowder has millions and millions of fans and followers.
Oh, yeah, and for a very long time. He's been in the digital space for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's a brand of his own. Yeah, they talk about themselves being brands. He's a brand. And so he left the Blaze and he tried to sell his brand to the Daily Wire, the Ben Shapiro people, and they got into a fight over what he was worth and what he could control. And I don't even know where he is now. Is he doing his own thing or?
Yeah, I believe it's his own platform. Yep.
Yeah. Well, wherever he is, and I'm not saying it as a slight. I don't have the time. I do my own show. I can't consume everybody else's shows. Somewhere out there is Steven Crowder doing a show that millions of people watch, and I respect that. And I respect that somehow, even the Daily Signal people, Wire people, Daily whatever they are, Ben Shapiro's people, even they had to tip their hat to him yesterday. He got a hold of the manifesto from the Nashville shooter. Nobody else, for some reason, could do this, but Crowder could. And I tell you what, the Nashville mayor is fit to be tied over it, too. They are pledging to get to the bottom of this, by God. I don't know who got a hold of this mass murderer's manifesto, but we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to turn over every nook and cranny. We're going to rip through every file. We're going to cross-examine every citizen until we figure out who did this. I said, wouldn't it be interesting to have even half as much interest from the left as to who leaked the Supreme Court decision last year? Wouldn't that be interesting if they put even a modicum of this kind of energy into outing that person as opposed to finding who leaked the documents of a murderer? Why were they so unwilling to release the Nashville shooter, this woman, and it is a woman, regardless of how many times you read it in mainstream media that this was a transgender man. This was a woman, a mentally ill woman who pretended to be a man sometimes, who shot up a Christian school in Nashville. And this woman, who's mentally ill and shot up the Christian school, wrote out a very detailed manifesto of why she did it. And for some reason, after it was established who this person was, and she was killed and her home searched, law enforcement and federal law enforcement got involved, and we were never allowed to see this manifesto again. And I opened the floor again, Fast Eddie. Why do you suppose it was? I don't have the answer. I could guess. Why is it you suppose they didn't want us to see what this woman wrote prior to assassinating the people in that school?
It's my belief that, they would show mental illness. It would show that this person is a transgender person and had severe mental problems that probably should have been dealt with years before.
Are you suggesting, let me add to it a little bit, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you saying that law enforcement or politicians who might be in control of law enforcement saw this and said, if this gets out and this goes public, this could be bad politically?
Absolutely, yes.
Politically how?
Because, Chris, if you're sane, you know that when someone's questioning their gender or has questions like that, it's smart to talk to somebody, to get professional help. Politically, on the other side of that, they don't want that to happen. They want people who are questioning their gender or sex or whatever, they want them to just start lopping off body parts and changing, their hormones and all that. So, yes, I think it's bad politically.
So you're saying that the American left and the Marxists who have been trying to encourage children at their youngest of ages that they aren't the gender that they were born and that they should have surgeries and take medications and whatnot that supposedly alter their gender, you're saying that would be a disruption to a multi-billion-dollar industry now, that would be a disruption to a political movement that is eroding the family and eroding masculinity and eroding public school. The Marxist takeover of the country would be interrupted if this assassin's manifesto was made public, because people would begin to see that people with this kind of ideology, this kind of belief that they're not the gender they are, you're saying that if they read something like this, it would lend credibility to the fact that they're not mentally well. And this could be very bad news for Marxists and leftists who want kids to believe that they can be any gender they want if they don't feel like the gender they are on any given day. That about right?
Yeah, you put it much more clear than I did.
No, I get it. It's no right answer here. I'm tracking with you. That's exactly what I think. And so somehow Steven Crowder got a hold of this thing. I don't know how. I don't know who. You think it was somebody inside the police department? Probably. My bet is it's a Crowder fan who said, I can get you I've got the manifesto. Click, click, click. Probably took out the iPhone, snapped physical pictures of the manifesto, and somehow got them to Steven Crowder, who got this scoop. And it is a huge scoop. I mean, this is, for a guy like Steven Crowder, this is next-level scoop stuff. And he's being credited in all major mainstream media outlets all over the place. So people that have never heard of him before are going to hear of him now. And I commend him. Again, I don't know the man. I don't know his work, but good for him. He did it. And it's a 28-year-old woman who pretended to be a man, as you know, shot up the Covington School on March 27th. Writing in this manifesto, can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm ready. I hope my victims aren't. I hope I have a high death count. Kill those kids going to fancy private schools with fancy khakis and sports backpacks and their daddy's Mustangs and convertibles. Want to kill all you. By the way, can you tell me why people are bleeping out crackers these days? When did cracker become a bleep-worthy word? That is the black slang term, isn't it, for whitey? I've said cracker for as long as I've been on air. I didn't know that was a non-FCC compliant term now. Social media has been bleeping out cracker, I saw last night. You notice that?
Yeah, I don't get that one either.
I mean, okay. I didn't know. I thought you could call whites anything you wanted. And it wasn't bleep-worthy or unacceptable. That was just modern-day parlance if you wanted to attack a white guy. I didn't know there was a bleep-worthy word, slang for white. But apparently exactly cracker right. Is. By the way, I think it's one of the funniest words ever. I know its origins. But, of course, its origins, I wasn't around for its origins. I think of it as a saltine, and I just find it funny. So when I first heard a black person refer to a white person as cracker, I thought, white cracker, like saltine, like a saltine's white. Literally, that's what I thought. And so I would say that over and over on the air, cracker, because I thought it was funny, and It used to be that Chris Rock would always say cracker. I would laugh and laugh. I thought it was so funny. That was a funny word. Like, if you're going to call me a name, cracker's not the worst name. I kind of giggled. And then one day somebody got a hold of me and they said, you know, that you throw that word around, and that's a very serious. You know what that means? You know what where that comes from? And you may not even know this, Fast Eddie. Let me educate you, as I was once educated. Do you know the origin of the word cracker?
I believe I do.
The slaveholder who would crack the whip. Cracker. Whip cracker. So it has nothing to do with saltines, to my disappointment. But I do think the saltine angle is still very funny and effective, is it not? And it's kind of a more PG version.
Yes, and Chris, I look at it, I take it one step further now that you said it, like how you viewed the word. I think of someone as like Tom Wolfe. You know how you say like milk toast?
Yes.
I think of him as like a cracker. Like,
well, right.
Like he's bland like a cracker.
He's bland. Yes, that's right. He's a piece of Melba toast. Tom Wolfe, the former governor of Pennsylvania. All right, so here's a couple of things about this manifesto, and it goes on and on. You've probably heard about it by now. Want to kill all you crackers, white privilege, little F's for gay word. There were, incidentally, this woman who calls herself a man called these students the F word, F-A-G-G-O-T-S, the F word, for the slang for gay. This is a terribly confused woman. Can you want to be a man and you're calling people the slur for gay? I don't even understand. I mean, this is, but again, cuckoo, mentally ill, off, right? It might be 10 minutes tops, she writes, 3 to 7. It's gonna go quick. And you can read it for yourself if you want to go on and read all of this madness. But my question is, isn't this person white? This person's white. This person has a sexuality problem, among other things. Mentally ill. No question about it. And she seems to write a manifesto from the what? Perspective of who? What does this speech sound like to you? Where does it come from? This is learned. This isn't something this woman created out of whole cloth. Where did it come from? Who talks like this? Answer: the left, the American left, the Democrat Party. This person learned the language of the left, much like the Bernie bro who tried to assassinate the Republicans on the baseball field, much like this woman at the Covington School. They all speak and they are all motivated to kill, literally kill. Their ideology politically has motivated them into such a crazed frenzy and rage, they are willing to murder over it. So I do have to backpedal a little bit from yesterday's show and say, because I wrote this a little later at the Harump Society yesterday. As I thought about it, I was at first going to say that I gave Hamas the edge on Democrats. I don't think so anymore. I actually think they're the same. Because actually the Democrat Party is Hamas. The Democrat Party has shown they're Hamas. They're aligned. White oppressors, white male oppressors in particular, are Hamas's enemy, and they are the enemy of the left. You heard this Letitia James woman. She was out, wasn't it just this weekend or yesterday? Too male, too pale, and too stale or something was her chant. Seriously. This is the woman that is trying to prosecute Trump in that sham trial in New York. Too pale, too male, too stale or something. They're openly chanting this in the street.
Stand up to an administration which is too male, too pale, and too stale.
Now, she's talking of her own, by the way. That's Biden. So Biden is just as much a marked man as, say, someone like me. You got women last night on television talking about they hope he dies in his sleep. She's in the street saying he's too male and too pale. Folks, this is like domestic Hamas. They are one and the same. This woman who shot up the Covington School, the Bernie bro who shot the Republic, these people are literally walking assassins in our midst. So all I would say, I'm not trying to alarm you here. What I'm saying is, first of all, don't ever give up your Second Amendment right. Arm yourself and do understand how to use firearms to protect yourself. These people are quite literally deadly serious, apparently, about their ideology. This left-wing Marxist ideology drives people to a mental place of rage. An unhinged place of rage and delusion. They are willing to wake up and journal their plans to assassinate school children, Christian school children. This is a white woman who has convinced herself that white kids are bad, Christians are bad. She wants to be a man. This is the left is a toxin. It's a cancer. They teach themselves to hate themselves. This white Christian woman, she was raised Christian. She went to this school. And somehow in just a few years, she taught herself to hate the fact she was a woman, hate the fact she was white, and hate Christians. So I amend yesterday's show, and I say the left the Hamas does not have the edge on the American left. The American left is probably equally as repressive and dangerous as Hamas. I would give them equal footing, I think now. I have to, particularly given the new evidence that we've seen from the Covington Christian School shooter. They are, and proud of it, by the way. They will document why. They tell us why they're doing it. So now, naturally, you can understand why they did not want this woman's manifesto released to you and me. Because it would be very edifying and clarifying, particularly at a terrible time in global history, as we see From the River to the Sea and Too Male, Too Pale, Too Stale, as we see these black liberation theology Marxists, as we see these pro-Hamas people converging in our American streets. What a terrible time it is for the transgender man. You mean the woman, the 28-year-old woman's manifesto to come out. She was yet another one of these people. She was another one of these acolytes. Folks, again, I say this is not the majority of the country. I don't despair because first of all, God's on the throne. He's not surprised by any of this. I don't despair. So we have a loving God who's in control of it all. I know exactly where I'm going. So I'm not in despair that way, nor do I think most of the country has lost their ever-loving mind. I don't believe that's true. But this insight into their ideology and their mental state is something you ought to take very seriously. This is no longer the days of the 80s and 90s where we had jokes about the Clintons, and this is a new ball game, and it's in some of their minds it's for keeps now, I'm sorry to say. It's for keeps. It's for all the marbles. Have you watched the conversation with my pal Jason Perrette at Eagle Wealth Planning? He's the financial advisor there at Eagle Wealth Planning. He has a passion for providing financial services to those who are looking to pursue financial independence. I was talking with one of my sons this weekend about a financial future, and he was thinking about things like Roth IRAs. He's been investigating this on his own. I said, you got to sit down with Jason, and we're going to do that soon. Listen, it doesn't matter where you are on your walk to financial freedom. Jason's main objective at Eagle Wealth Planning is to help clients pursue their goals. Because he's a fiduciary, he's dedicated to providing clients with complete wealth management and investment services, highly personalized professional assistance. It's not about what he pockets. All right. Jason can help accomplished entrepreneurs, professionals, retirees, or young people like my son just get started to a long-term financial independent road. He regularly revisits your goals and assesses your risk tolerance. We have a whole conversation about this at my website. Go to chrisstigall.com. You can watch my conversation with him, and it doesn't matter where you live. If you don't like your particular advisor or you don't have one, let Jason step in and see if he can take a look at your money, see if he can help it grow and get you to that place of financial independence that all of us are striving to get to. I think you're going to like the way he works. He's a blunt, no-nonsense kind of guy, tells you the truth, loves conversation. You're going to love working with him. Go to EagleWealthPlanning.com. That's EagleWealthPlanning.com. Or you can call Jason today at 816-394-8117. That's 816-394-8117. As always, there's a video conversation. Jason and I sit down and chat. It's at ChrisStigall.com. He's also linked at ChrisStigall.com so you can get a sense of Jason. I always think it's important if you're going to talk about partnering with somebody, you should get to know them. You should see what they're all about, and you'll see in that conversation kind of Jason's character and the way he thinks and talks and acts. I think you're going to like him a lot. So go to ChrisStigall.com for more information or email him at jason@EagleWealthPlanning.com. Securities and advisory services offered through Cetera Advisors, LLC. Member FINRA, SIPC, a broker-dealer and registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. I can't get over this. You had a swing state battleground poll that came out and said he was underwater in literally every one of them. You have Democrats in the streets saying he's too male, too pale, and too stale. You have David Axelrod on television saying, think it over, Joe. You have Rob Reiner. Sarah Silverman hopes he dies in his sleep. I mean, this is all yesterday. This is Monday. He's having the worst day a president, I think, in history's ever had. Maybe. Since Abraham Lincoln and the Civil War. It hasn't been this ugly for a president. And what does he do? He goes to Delaware and starts talking about riding the rails.
These are jobs for folks I thought about as I take that train home. You know the park guys, you get outside of Baltimore, just before you get into Baltimore, you can look out the window and you're going through basically the neighborhood. And I always used to sit there, I mean it, coming home, and look out and see people sitting at the kitchen tables. Literally, you could see them.
Always the kitchen table. Always the kitchen. Always.
Wondering, what are they thinking about?
Peeking in their homes.
What are they? What's on their mind?
Not you. That's what he was doing yesterday in the middle of all that. Thinking about the people at their kitchen table as he's looking through the window. If he was actually thinking, by the way, about people at their kitchen table struggling to pay their bills, he would open up drilling across the country right now. He would begin to drill right now. He would close the border now. He would slap tariffs on China now. He would reduce spending. He would get together with the new Speaker of the House and slash spending now, if he really cared about those people sitting at their kitchen table. You know, there's a story today at Fox that says student loan debt has teachers turning to porn to pay it all off. Have you heard these stories in the last few weeks of these teachers that are now being exposed for having gone to OnlyFans? And for those of you that don't know what that is, OnlyFans is basically a subscription-only site. You can go and you can pay people directly that do explicit things online. It's basically pay-to-play pornography. If you didn't know about it, there are a couple of guys going, hey, say, neither here nor there. Whatever. You do you. But OnlyFans is a place where people go and they make extraordinary amounts of money. And I'm told, I don't know, I'm not a member, believe it or not. You can check my phone like the Speaker of the House and his son. I am not a member of OnlyFans, but my understanding is if you're an attractive woman, or man, I guess, you can go there and make a substantial living. People will pay a lot of money to watch you do graphic and sexual things, Fast Eddie. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
So I wonder if old Joe, who thinks about people sitting at their kitchen table, I wonder what he thinks about school teachers and people going off to a college, a four-year institution, and getting a degree that straps them with such debt they've got to turn to porn to pay it off while they teach. What will Dr. Jill think about that, do you suppose, Fast Eddie?
You know.
Yeah. Actually, knowing the Bidens, he may go, that's not a bad idea. Hunter's all for it, the crackhead. That's another one, by the way. We don't know. We don't know who leaked the Supreme Court. We also haven't been able to find who brought the baggie of cocaine into the White House. But boy, they're going to get to the bottom of who released that manifesto in Nashville yesterday. By God, they'll hunt that guy down. We turn to our friend Mark Weaver, who has been and will be, assuming he continues to want to be. He's going to be our. We're leaning in and leaning into Mark Weaver's expertise as a constitutional attorney. He worked for the DOJ for quite some time as a former spokesperson. So he knows a thing or two about institutional government. He also knows the law. in private practice, and he's just a great communicator. He's written a book called A Wordsmith's Work, by the way, for those of you that are fans of Mark, who regularly appears here. And we will continue to lean on you, Mark, for the 91 counts Trump has brought up on across the board and helping to sort through it all. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Chris. I was listening to your lesson on federalism.
Yes.
Because you're exactly right. The founders wanted elections to be run at the local level. They wanted most things to be run at the local level, and that's a core tenet of federalism, so bravo.
And isn't that what Democrats, to my point I was making earlier, isn't that what Democrats would love to eradicate? They would love nothing more than to have a national discussion on how we run elections. That's what they've been aiming to do all along.
Well, they want to nationalize everything because in their view, if they can get one person in power in the executive branch, that person can run the country. But the president doesn't run the country, at least not when the country is being run the way it should be. It's run by local city and county and state officials all around the country in different ways because different communities require different styles. And that's exactly what the framers intended.
Do you think, it's election day in many, I think like 37 states are having elections today. I kind of asked a rhetorical question. I hate to be defeatist, and I don't ever want anybody to feel like they shouldn't vote because I think it's all we can do, and I think we always must, and never lose faith in the hope that it will be done above board. But do you think I think we've entered an era now, I'm sorry to say, where there will always be this skepticism of outcomes, maybe forever. I mean, Democrats have paved the way for that. We know how we feel about 2020. I don't know. Are we just at a place in this country where there will be a constituency that will never trust the outcome of elections?
I hope not. Certainly that's happening now. Truth seems to be on trial lately.
Yes, well said.
And this is just one version of that. Whenever you hear someone say my truth, that's somebody who doesn't understand the nature of truth. And in elections, when you have people like that running them, or if they simply, reject the outcome because they lose, I thought it was high irony the other day to have Stacey Abrams being interviewed nationally and having her criticize what she called election deniers. That's a little bit like John Wilkes Booth criticizing presidential assassins. Because she was the OG. She was the original election denier, and I think deep in her heart she still thinks she's the governor of Georgia.
Mark Weaver's book, again, called A Wordsmith's Work. You can get that at Amazon, or it has its own website, awordsmithswork.com. Mark, yesterday, this judge in New York, my word, not yours, I think it's just a sleazeball. He's just a low-rent partisan in a black robe. Don't like him. I just don't. And he's an unlikable person. And he's very aware of cameras and microphones, and he likes the presence of cameras and microphones. But the one thing that Democrats always underestimate about Donald Trump is he also likes cameras and microphones, and he does it better than they do. And so he's decided, it's clear to me, okay, Judge, you want to display all this? You want to try to humiliate me? You want to roll cameras in here? Then we're just going to have it out. I almost feel, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, Mark, it almost feels like Trump is daring this guy to jail him. Trump leans into chaos like most Republicans wouldn't dare. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he surfs other people's anger and makes progress doing it.
Yes.
This judge, I won't use your terms. I'm an officer of the court. I have to be a little more careful than you, but I will say this, that let's remember why judges wear robes. There's a reason for it. Not because they're fashionable. It's because it's supposed to cloak the personality and the partisanship of the judge, and a reminder that they are not there because of their own personal views or their political persuasion. They are there as a representative of the justice system, and they're supposed to act that way. And judges who don't, they create this undermining of the system and the suspicion that you and I were talking about moments ago, where if people begin to think it's all just who you know and what your politics are, they start failing to trust the system and the rule of law, and that's how republics become undone.
You wrote a important piece at the Federalist about gagging Trump's political speech. I don't know how someone like Letitia James gets to run around. Now, again, the gag order on Trump came from a different judge in a different case, I understand. But how does somebody like Letitia James get to run around and say what she says? Too white, too male, too pale, and she said endless slanderous things about Trump in public. Everyone sees it, but it's so blatant. I don't understand how a judge or any kind of legitimate judicial system says Trump's got to watch his language, but she doesn't have to.
Very troubling. I've taught First Amendment law. It's one of my areas. Here's just one little basic tenet of First Amendment law. Political speech is the most protected speech in the country. And Donald Trump is speaking politically. And so for a judge, any judge, or an attorney general to suggest that they can somehow limit someone's political speech is unconstitutional on its face. Thank you for pointing to my Federalist piece, which talks about the gag order from the judge in D.C., which thankfully, I'm not going to say it's because of my piece, but thankfully the appeals court has put on hold. Almost certainly will be overturned. But what they're doing, Chris, is that the Democrats are making transparent their intention to use every lever and button in government to stop Donald Trump from being president again. And it's one thing to go out and work hard to try to defeat him politically. That's the American way. But when you use people who have political power in the judicial system or as an attorney general, that's quite a different thing, and it's very worrisome.
I don't know how it ends. Of course, no one can predict it, but chaos normally favors Democrats, and Trump pushing this judge. I really did ask myself yesterday, could he goad this guy into jailing him or attempting to? And if he tried, would it happen? Would it work? What would the reaction be? I mean, we're in unprecedented times, Mark. I could almost see it. Trump left that courtroom and went out and held court again. I don't know. Could he pick a fight with this judge to the point this judge loses his cool and tries to throw him in jail? Serious question.
I believe that one of these judges that Donald Trump will face in the next 15 months or so will put him in jail. I think that's going to happen.
Wow.
And I'm worried about that. I will actually gather my family and friends together when that happens and say things are going to be a little scary for the next week or two, because there have been periods in American history, not recently, where mobs have gone to jails to get somebody out of there who they think is unfairly there, and then that's where we get into serious, dangerous, violent situations. And I'm not encouraging anybody. In fact, I would discourage people to use violence for political means. But we have seen in our history where when the public at large believes someone is being unfairly held in a jail, that people act in very aggressive ways to stop that. And so it's a dangerous road to go down, particularly because of what you and I have discussed, not just today, but in our previous discussions over the years, of what appears to be an illegitimate attempt to use the legal system for a political end.
Can you go back, Ed, I'm calling an audible here, and you may not be able to find it. Eric Holder talking to Jen Psaki a couple of weeks ago. And Mark, I don't think we were talking to you at the time about this, but I found it interesting that Eric Holder kind of surfaces out of nowhere. He hasn't made a lot of he's a lot like Obama. They surface very randomly out of nowhere. And Holder basically says, and I'll summarize it because we may not be able to find it, that Psaki is almost, her fangs are dripping. She's so excited at the prospect of Trump being thrown in jail. To which Eric Holder says, well, now let's slow down. I think that would be we do have that. Let's listen to a little of it. Here we go.
Do you think, looking at this, Judge Chutkan reinstated the gag order after she put a pause on it? It's still under appeal. Are you confident, or do you feel comfortable with her legal justification for reinstating it?
Yeah, I certainly think there's a basis for her concern. I think there's a basis for the order that she has, in fact, put in place. My expectation would be that the appellate court will, in fact, uphold that which she has tried to restrain the former president from doing. It's a pretty limited order. It does not say that you can't say anything. It says you can't say negative things about a relatively small universe of people. You can even comment on the case. But I think, as you said in the lead-in, I think he's likely to go beyond that, which even she says in that limited order. And we're going to have some ultimate questions that I think are going to have to be determined. Would a judge actually do that which would happen to a normal person and put somebody in jail for violating an order, not to a gag order? I suspect that's not likely to happen with this defendant, but any other defendant would probably be facing.
You don't think that she would put him in jail, or that they would decide to put him in jail ultimately?
I just don't think so. I mean, I think there are a number of things you put monetary fines on him, as the judge did in New York. Perhaps restrict his ability to use Truth Social. A number of things. I try to be as creative as possible if I were the judge, but I'd be extremely reluctant to take a person who's a former president, the leading candidate of one of our major parties, and actually put him in jail.
Because you'd be worried about the political.
Mark, my question is, do you think he's being sincere there? I would be extremely reluctant to put the leading candidate of a party and the former president in jail. Do you think Eric Holder means that? I actually don't, but maybe you do.
Yeah, I mean, he's a political player more than a legal player. I give him credit for at least pointing it out that it'd be a bad thing to do. Whether he means it or not, I don't know his heart.
Yeah.
But it is a bad thing to do. But you know what's interesting, Chris? Listen to the other remedies he suggested. They all have one thing in common. Shut him up.
Right. That's right.
Don't let him speak. This is what dictators have done in world history, is they shut up their critics.
Yeah.
And by shutting up their critics, they maintain power. And so whenever someone is trying to silence a voice, the first question we should always ask is, why do they want that voice silenced? People always say, well, Mark, are you going to allow flat earthers to have a platform? And my answer is, of course I am. I want them to get up and make that case that if you keep sailing across the Atlantic, you'll fall off the edge of the earth, because that case will fall on its own lack of merit. It's the people who say, no, there are certain views that cannot be aired. And right now, the Democrat Party and its people in power saying Donald Trump just can't be heard from.
There's always this, it seems like every time we talk, I have you back about a new venue. I mean, for a while it was Georgia on our mind. Now we're back to New York. I'm sure, coming to a theater near you we're going back down to the documents case in Florida. And then back up to D.C. Like, do you get the news cycle thing? It's like we go Georgia, Manhattan, Miami. Like, they're all the most important thing in the moment. Then we move on, and then we go to the next hot button. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. The walls are closing in, as they say repeatedly on Donald Trump. I really do think they thought this would bring him down, and I think Democrats across the country are puzzled at how he continues to get stronger, because even folks who don't like Donald Trump or who roll their eyes at him or don't like some of his things he says on social media, I think they see what the game is. The game is we can't defeat him politically, so we'll use the legal system to defeat him, and that is the core of selective prosecution, and most fair-minded people oppose that.
On a related note, Department of Homeland Security, according to Jim Jordan and the House Judiciary Committee, I don't know if you saw this yesterday, DHS assisted in the creation of a disinformation group at Stanford University that worked to censor the speech of Americans prior to the 2020 election. We all knew this to some degree, but the expansiveness of it is stunning. In this House panel's 103-page report, the emails and internal communications show how the group Election Integrity Partnership, or EIP, worked with DHS's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency to alert, suppress, and remove certain online speech in coordination with big tech. And then they name all the names. It's not an exhaustive list, but they name many, many names, conservative pundits on social media, whose names you know, Molly Hemingway, for instance, and many others. This was a highly coordinated effort, Mark. Your read on that?
I did, and this goes directly back to what we were just talking about. Silence them. And if a private company wants to silence my speech, I'm not happy about it, but there's not a First Amendment implication. When the government conspires with a private company to silence my speech, now we have a constitutional violation. We have a federal civil rights violation. We knew it happened to Twitter. The Twitter files show it. And now we have files coming out from the House that show it in this form that you just described. Imagine if the Republicans had not won back the House. We wouldn't know most of what we know lately about this and about issues about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. What else is there that we don't know that's going to come out?
Consortium of Disinformation Academics, led by Stanford University's Stanford Internet Observatory, that worked to monitor and censor Americans' online speech in advance of the 2020 election.
Some viewpoints just can't be heard, don't you know? Chris? You should know that.
Here's the thing that a lot of people shout. Okay, House, you released this report. Now what? What do you say to that, Mark? Now what? I mean, I know, Americans, Republicans are very frustrated. They want to see the new speaker. They want to see some kind of action. What is the action here when you don't control the Senate, you don't control the White House right now? Is there any action?
Everyone listening to our voices right now controls something today. It's Election Day. And we run the country. Remember, we're at the top of the organizational chart. It's not the governor, not the president. Citizens are at the top of the organizational chart. Today's the day we speak. And so every election day, we get the chance to decide who's going to do our work for us in government. This is how we act. We organize, we raise money, and on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, we go out and vote. So that's what people need to do today. Keep this stuff in mind when you vote. Pennsylvania's got some important races. Other states have important races. And then this time next year, we'll have the presidency and the Congress will be up again.
You're a very sober judge of things, and you carefully select your words when we speak. And you said something that I really, one more time before I let you go, you feel like it's quite, I don't want to put words in your mouth, likely? You would not be surprised to see one of these judges try to jail Trump ahead of Election Day. And then if that happens, you're deeply concerned about what that means next.
Yes. They can't help themselves. Other than the judge in Florida, who's a little more restrained, these other judges, they are performative. They need to show their fellow Democrats how anti-Trump they are and what's the ultimate anti-Trump card you can play as a judge, to jail him. And if that happens, again, I don't think people should go out and buy canned goods and, live in their basement and hold on to their gun. I don't think it's going to be quite that bad. I do think that we will see political unrest at a level that's unique in American history.
And wouldn't that benefit Democrats mightily? Wouldn't that be the case they want to make? Here we go again, January 6th all over again, is what they'd say, right?
Well, that, and they'll also do things like, during this time we should suspend the Second Amendment.
Or the election.
The First Amendment.
Or the election, maybe.
Or whatever, yeah. Exactly. It becomes an opportunity to curtail rights that are God-given and that are recognized and protected through our Constitution.
Dark stuff on bended knee and prayer is where most of us should spend our time these days, all of us, in my view. Mark Weaver, A Wordsmith's Work, wordsmithswork.com, or on Amazon if you want to get it there. Mark R. Weaver on X, formerly Twitter. Thanks, as always, Mark. Jeff Andrew represents the 2nd Congressional District of New Jersey. He also, you mentioned, you sit on the House Judiciary Committee, who released a report yesterday, 103-page interim report that details how Homeland Security worked with something called the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency to suppress and remove online speech in coordination with big tech. We knew that to some degree. We didn't know the vastness of it. This report lays out that so many of my colleagues and people that a lot of this audience probably reads on and relies for information, so many in a wide way were targeted in conjunction with Stanford University and DHS and other government agencies. Have you gone through that report yourself and read some of the particulars?
I have looked at it, and it's what we knew it to be true. These aren't Republican talking points. They're not Jeff Andrew talking points. This is the real world. There's something called the Facebook files, Chris. I don't know if you've seen some of that, but we were trying to get information from Facebook again, and you heard, obviously, what was Twitter and is now X. It's all these platforms were being monitored. The Facebook files, real quick, similar to what you just spoke about with Homeland Security. We had to threaten that we not only subpoena, which we did, but that we would hold Zuckerberg in contempt of Congress if he didn't turn over unredacted versions of the emails that were sent out among some of the employees. Understand, this is not national security. There's no reason to redact this. What was going on? Here's what was going on. The White House was directly dealing with Facebook, saying what speech should be stopped, particularly conservative speech, particularly speech as well as anything to do with faith, family, freedom type of stuff. They were actually censoring that and removing that from Facebook. This is not, again, a Republican or a Jeff Andrew talking point. This is our lives. This is the stuff we read about that could happen if we're not careful.
Students at Stanford, Congressman, sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to, this is an amazing report. Students at Stanford were working in conjunction with government agencies to censor certain speech online?
Yes, and it's in the report, and it's not made up stuff. This isn't some political campaign. This is just what is happening. It is frightening what's going on. It's awful what's going on. And so, we need, Chris, we know what United States of America should be about, a free exchange of ideas. Same with our universities. We're going to be having a hearing. We do a lot of stuff in judiciary. We're having a hearing on what exactly is going on in our college campuses and what type of censorship exists there and why conservatives find it so much harder if you're a conservative student or if you're a conservative speaker. Do you remember years ago Condoleezza Rice wanted to go to my alma mater, Rutgers University, which I've always been so proud of graduating from, and yet it was made so uncomfortable for her that she actually didn't go and speak. The bottom line is if you're a conservative, you are stopped from having very often the right to speak what your ideas are. We should have all ideas. Socialist ideas, conservative ideas, libertarian ideas, Republican ideas, Democratic ideas. That's what universities and colleges are about. That's what the United States is about, a free exchange of ideas on the marketplace of ideas. And we're not doing that. And that is frightening. If they can do it now, they're going to do it in the future and it'll get worse.
We've been having kind of I will say it's a dark conversation. It's not a place I want to go. And I certainly don't like imagining what ifs because we got enough problems that are real without imagining things. But I say all that to say this battle that Trump is having right now with a couple of judges in particular, I feel like we're getting awfully close to one of them just deciding they've had enough with him and try to literally jail him. I really do think that could be where we're going. And I wonder if you or your colleagues think much about that and what that would mean if so.
Of course we do. I mean, let's use the civil trial in New York, for example. There is no case in recorded legal history in New York, and I believe probably anywhere, where someone is indicted and he, by the way, in the lower courts, he's going to get convicted. He has judges and prosecutors and attorney generals involved in all these that campaigned. They ran for office to be whatever position they hold and campaigned. We're going to go after Donald Trump. We have judges that contributed to the Democratic Party and anti-Trump movements. I mean, that this isn't fair. For real, this is not fair. This has nothing to do with the justice we know. He was exactly right. This is like a third world or a banana republic, and we know that this is going to happen. There isn't a recorded case that we can find anywhere or anybody can find where this has ever happened to any other person. For example, in the civil trial, they say he overvalued his properties, which aren't true. I mean, I think they were actually undervalued. But whatever the case, there was no victim. Yeah. He paid everything off, every last penny, every last dollar. There's no victim here. There's no such case ever in legal history. What the heck is going on?
Do you think, Congressman, do you think, meanwhile, on the Democrat side, it's funny because you used to be one, and I'm sure you probably still have some friends who are. Do you think that they're, I can't get a read on it. I know they know Biden's a mess. I know all the polls say Biden's a mess and underwater. What I'm trying to figure out is, do you think they really want rid of him? And if so, what's their plan if they really want rid of him, like they say? So many seem to be saying now.
I wouldn't pretend to know what the plan is. I know, though, however, look, these are folks, and again, some of them, you meet them, they're good people. People real quickly say to me sometimes, I've met so-and-so, he's my congressman, my legislator, whatever the case may be. And you know what? They say they're really moderate and they believe in moderate values. They're the same as me. I don't say anything negative about anybody. I just say all I ask you to do is check their voting record.
That's right.
Here's the deal. They vote together.
Yep.
Even the guys that seem like good guys and gals, they vote together and they vote for all of this ultra left-wing stuff. And so they see the end game. Here's the difference between sometimes where Republicans, if I may say so, and I've been one for 5 years now, fall short. And I said this in caucus when we were going through the speaker stuff. What's the end game? The end game for Democrats is to change the United States of America as we have ever known it, ever in history. And, they've said to me, some Democrats, especially on the ultra-left socialist side, say, you keep talking about American exceptionalism. There is no American exceptionalism. We're the same as every other country in the world, no better and sometimes worse. What do you believe? What are your listeners to believe? Are we an exceptional country? Is this the greatest experiment on a republic ever that was done? Or are we the same as everybody else? That's what the real deal is here. Their end game is to change America. Our end game should be and must be to save our republic, not save the Republican Party, but most importantly, save the republic.
Yes.
For your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. So they have an end game. If they really think he can't win, but time is their enemy here, they're going to try to do something. And the candidate, the governor of California, is awful. Look what he did to his state. Look at the way he comports himself. They don't want Kamala. So they're in a little bit of a corner here as well. My gut would be it's still going to be Joe Biden, but they're going to try something because behind him is Obama and a whole cabal of people. Not Joe Biden. He's not running anything. In his particular case, there's a group around him.
Of course. I never imagined I'd see a day where even Democrats, I just didn't. I couldn't creatively see a day where Democrats would tell the sitting Democrat president, if he continues to insist on supporting Israel, they'll break with him in elections. But that's what they're saying now. I can't imagine we're here, but here we are.
And he is scared. You can tell.
Yes.
So he's trying to. He knows he's in a real look. I got to tell you, you just can't ride the fence all the time. You have to stand for something. And some of these people come to me and say, you're so outspoken. Aren't you afraid you're going to lose people that support you? I don't think so, because even people, they say, Jeff, I disagree with you on this issue, but I agree with you, on your love of America and on every other issue. That's what this president should realize. He should just stand with Israel. He shouldn't try to tie one arm behind their back. Yeah, I stand with Israel, but you have to be more compassionate. You need a pause in the war, which helps, Hamas reorganize and even get stronger. He doesn't say that, but that's what it does. No, you just got to stand strong. You cannot please both of these sides. Either you believe Israel is our greatest ally, or and that it is important to save this nation, or you believe that, no, we don't really stand by Israel anymore, which is what some of the folks in Congress do. And it's not just one or two.
Yeah.
You've seen the votes, 15, 20 or more sometimes. We don't stand with Israel. We stand with Hamas. We stand with Palestine. You've got to make a decision.
Congressman Jeff Andrew, he represents New Jersey's 2nd Congressional District. Congratulations on the offshore wind fight. I know it's one battle in a war, but it was a big battle, and you won it, and you led the charge on that. Thank you for that. Thank you for your time today. Thanks for your work on the House Judiciary Committee. I hope you'll come back, sir. It's been my pleasure and honor to talk about Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, just off the Blue Route, as my dentist and friend of over 12 years. But now he has 2 brand new associates, his daughter Alexa and Dr. Geddes. Tell him about him, Bob.
Yeah, Chris, I can't begin to express how proud I am, obviously, of having my daughter there. Also, Dr. Geddes is just a wonderful addition to our practice. He is a classmate of my daughter Alexa's at Temple Dental School, and I have known Jared for about 7 years now. Getting to know Jared over the years, it was my wife Debbie and my daughter Emily who kept telling me, you have to hire Jared. You have to hire Jared. He's going to be a superstar. Jared went off to USC, did a 1-year residency after his year at Temple, and he came back and he worked for about a year in a practice in New Jersey. And after, again, my wife and daughter beating my brains in, I got the message and I hired Jared, and he's been a great addition to Williamsburg Dental.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. There will be a lot read. Suffice it to say, a lot will be read into the outcome of today, and I would just remind you gently that odds are, as much as we've talked about it here, you're still going to have a very, very low turnout. So I don't want people dispirited thinking that, look, I hope for animated people. I do. I am accustomed to and inclined to believe, if history is any indicator, that the turnout will be very low. And for those of you that are very animated about this today, you may, again, come away disappointed, feeling like, well, nobody cares, nobody's paying attention. I don't want an off-year midterm to dispirit anybody, no matter what comes of today. We hope for animation, may not get it, not indicative of next year. And as always, I say, if you're concerned about the way your polling place or your elections are being run in your county, now is the time to get involved and start talking to your board of elections, to talk to your county commissioners, and figure out a plan for next year. There's much that can be done and much that can be learned from today, even if it is a low turnout. Steve Moore is our chief economist. You know, it's interesting, Steve-O, because you got a lot of Republicans out there as we're heading toward a nomination battle amongst the Republicans. Kim Reynolds, the governor in Iowa, very successful governor in Iowa. She just came out and endorsed DeSantis yesterday, while to the south, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Both these women, wildly successful governors, both universal school choice, have introduced to their states. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, of course, endorsing Trump tomorrow to counter-program the Republican debate. So it's interesting, the dividing lines. And I know where you stand, but look, I mean, this battle with Trump right now in courts it's kind of been the theme of this morning. It feels almost like he's daring this judge to throw him in jail, Steve-O. Seriously, good morning.
Good morning, Chris. By the way, I want to say something about the elections because I was just listening to what you were saying.
You got them there in your state of Virginia today.
We do. We have a big one in Virginia where if Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia and the rising star of the Republican Party, is not on the ballot, but all of the legislative seats are. And so it's a total battle. Virginia is the prototypical purple state. It's actually kind of turned blue, but Youngkin is trying to turn it back red. When I first moved to Washington 35 years ago, Pennsylvania was a pretty red state, and Virginia was a pretty red state, and both of those then moved Democrat. Now I think we've got to at least make them purple states. That's your job, okay, Chris?
Trying my best.
Sure that, I know. So, okay. So, but I want to read you this quote because this comes from, Thomas Sowell, right?
Oh, yes.
Famous economist and, a legend. He's 94 years old. I'm proud to call Thomas Sowell a friend. I don't know him well, but he and I have corresponded over the years, and I'm just, it is so cool that I even know this guy because he's one of the greatest economists who ever lived. So can I just read this passage from him, from his latest book, because it is so apropos of people going to the polls today.
Please.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, this is Thomas Sowell, folks. If you have been voting for politicians who promise to give you goodies at someone else's expense, then you have no right to complain when they take your money and give it to someone else, including themselves.
Pretty strong.
Profound?
That's as true as it ever's been. That's right. That's wisdom.
This stuff is not complicated. The only way they can give money to Peter is take it from Paul, and in most cases we're the Paul, and they're the Peter. So this is a big election. I think there's a lot at stake in a number of these states, and it also be a barometer of what people think about Biden at this point. His polls are in the toilet right now, and I do not believe I don't know what you think about this, Chris. I do not believe that Joe Biden will be the Democratic nominee. I'm persuaded that they're going to throw him over the side of the boat, and they're going to try to run with someone maybe like Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan or maybe Gavin Newsom of California. But when you look at his numbers, I mean, they've been consistently rotten now. They're lower than like Richard Nixon's poll ratings during Watergate, for goodness sake. So they're really bad numbers, and the American people understand. I mean, there's no way. Do you think Joe Biden could possibly serve as president for 4 more years?
Listen, do you want to know how bad it is? Listen to Sarah Silverman, comedian. Let me play this for you again. We played this earlier. This is how bad it's gotten. These are the jokes they're making about Biden now. Listen to this.
Things off with the reason most of the people in this audience could not sleep well last night. A new poll shows Joe Biden getting trounced by Donald Trump in almost every single swing state. Don't panic. It's still too early to say Biden will definitely lose. He could absolutely die in his sleep instead. I'm just saying, this is really scary for liberals. And I mean actually scary, not like they took Hamilton off Disney Plus scary. But you know what? I'm going to be honest. I like a scary poll number. Puts a little fire under your tuchus. This is a wake-up call to Joe Biden. I mean, no, really. Joe, wake up.
Joe, wake up. Maybe he'll die in his sleep, she openly jokes and hopes. I mean, that's how bad it's gotten.
Right. And look, I do think they're going to throw him over the side of the boat, but I want to make sure that people understand they're all the same. I mean, the Democratic Party has been taken over by a radical left-wing fringe. And, so that's why you're seeing the craziness on college campuses. I don't know about you, Chris, I think for the first time, even some of my more kind of moderate to left friends are like, what the hell happened to my party?
Yeah.
These people are crazy.
WeWork. Here's a headline today.
You sense that at all, Chris?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you haven't left the Democrat Party by now, then you must be some sort of anti-Semitic lunatic. I don't know.
That's true.
WeWork, once valued at $47 billion, files for bankruptcy. I don't know how you read that one. U.S. accounting giant Grant Thornton LLP laying off 200 people. How do you read those?
Look, I think the economy is fragile. We got a really good GDP report a couple of weeks ago for the third quarter, so that was good. I never root against the American economy. I want America to do as well as possible. I want to see American workers to be the highest paid workers in the world. But it just feels to me, Chris, like, I don't know, like there's termites in the basement and this house is about to collapse. I mean, you can't keep running $2 trillion budget deficits every year. You can't keep having the American people running $1 trillion credit card debt. You can't keep letting millions and millions of illegal immigrants into the country. And I'm pro-immigrant, but you got to have an orderly border. You can't keep sending oil and gas money to the Iranians and to the Russians and the Chinese. I mean, we're doing so many things that are just wrong for our country and wrong for our economy. So, yeah, am I nervous about the economy? I am. And I'm not going to predict a recession because a lot of people predicted a recession this year, and we actually had a bit of a pickup in the economy. But the latest jobs report was a little concerning. We got big downward revisions in the number of people working from previous months, and it started to show some layoffs. So we'll see. I hope we can steer out of this. But we've made a lot of mistakes economically starting in Washington, D.C. in the last 2 years.
Steve-O, did you see this headline at the Wall Street Journal? New headache for bosses. Employees aren't quitting. Did you see this? The white-collar labor market is softening to a point. Companies are encountering an issue that would have been unthinkable in the era known as the Great Recession. These days, too few people are voluntarily leaving. Turnover has declined so steeply at some large employers. Companies now find themselves over budget on certain teams, requiring leaders to weigh whether to postpone projects or cut additional staff at the end of year. Other bosses worry about how to keep star employees engaged when there are far fewer vacant positions internally, making it harder to move people into new roles. Explain this one to me.
So there's a statistic out there called the quit rate, and that's the percentage of workers who are in a job that quit their job and then move to another job. And, one of the hallmarks of the American economy is upward mobility. So normally when you quit one job, you quit that job because, hey, the guy down the street is offering more money. It's a better job. I'm going to get better training. I'm going to climb the economic ladder. So it may sound a little perverse, but actually when people quit their job, it's actually a good thing because it means there's more opportunities. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
Chris. And so, for example, during the Great Depression, when the unemployment rate went up to 25%, nobody quit their job, right? Nobody would quit their job if there are no other jobs out there. So the fact that the quit rate is declining means people are holding on to their job because they're nervous. They're nervous about whether there are other jobs available. So that's a bad sign. And by the way, there's another one I just saw in the Wall Street Journal. This is from about a week or two ago. But it really struck me as indicative of what's going on with the American labor force. And it's from the Wall Street Journal. It says, workers shed their reluctance to call in sick. And that what this shows is the percentage of employees who take sick leave for, having the flu or having, a bad back or something like that. And what it shows that before the pandemic, okay, ready for this, Chris? Before the pandemic, about 22% of workers would call in sick. They'd use sick leave. Now, it is 34%. So people are more likely not to be showing up. And of course, a lot of people aren't even, they're working at home, more telecommuting, which is the big trend. And so now there was a big also article in the Wall Street Journal a couple of weeks ago that employers are starting to say, it's time to get back into the office.
Yes.
Because you just don't know, whether the people are actually working.
It's fascinating. In survey of workers, many show a newfound commitment to their current employers, though. This year, 73% of workers, and this is from the Wall Street Journal piece, 73% of workers say they plan to stay at their jobs, up from 61% last year. Back to that quit rate thing. So yes, more likely to call in sick, but less likely to quit, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah,
right?
now that's a double-edged sword. It might be an indication of of worker satisfaction with their job, which is a good thing. We want people to be happy in the work that they do, but it also might be an indication that they're just nervous about. I don't know. All the polls are showing Americans are very nervous. And they're angry.
Yes.
They're angry about their falling wages. This is something I don't get the sense, because I live in Washington. I talk to these politicians all the time. Even the Republicans, I don't think, and especially the Democrats, don't really get how in Main Street USA, people are angry about what's happening to our country.
NBC News, rural voters continue to evade Democrats, and they cite dairy farmers, pork producers in Iowa. We've had higher costs, and our products we produce has not risen in value correspondingly. We're the people that produce food and manufacture a lot of goods that people on the coasts need every day, and we seem to be ignored just because we don't have the population. That's NBC News.
Well, those rural areas have turned much more Republican in the last 10 or 15 years. There's a real rural versus urban divide in America. I mean, if Pennsylvania, by the way, Chris, this is the prototypical,
oh my gosh,
case study of that. You get outside Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. I mean, you're in South Carolina.
Yeah, it's farm country.
Attitude. Yeah, and then you go into the cities. And that those places are as liberal as can be. So that's just indicative of a divide in America.
But see, this is where, and Steve-O, this is where I just, I want everybody to be cautious, though, because we did this in 2022. We were talking about the dire state of things, and then we were surprised that Republicans didn't win in a rout, and it was because of issues like abortion. They still, the Republican brand is so damaged in many ways that people will vote against their own interests, Even the dog agrees.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think if it weren't for the abortion issue right now, Republicans would have a 10 percentage point higher lead, in the polls. But look, abortion is a big issue for a lot of, especially women, young women. And Republicans have to come up with a solution to that everybody can live with. I was thinking last night, why can't we all agree, Chris, on 16, 20 weeks, something like that, something that, the vast majority of Americans would agree on. Maybe my staunch pro-life friends might not go for that, and some of the radical, pro-abortion people wouldn't go for it. But I think Americans are sensible on this position, and I'd love to see it resolved in a way that everybody can feel pretty comfortable with it, but we protect life, but also protect rights of women.
Well, watch Ohio today, because that's on their ballot. As you know, they're going to add that to their constitution today. So watch how Ohio turns one way or the other, and we'll learn a lot.
Yeah, what does that initiative say exactly?
Effectively, it's putting abortion back in their constitution so you can abort babies.
Okay. Yeah, that will pass. My guess is that will pass.
Yeah,
and I don't know the exact, but every election that's been held since that Supreme Court decision that's come down has really motivated the pro-abortion candidates, not the people on the right. Well, we'll see. But look, my feeling is we got an economy that is in big trouble right now. We've got an education system that's out of control. We've got a border system that isn't secure. We've got a lot of issues other than abortion to be concerned about right now.
So Steve Moore is on the panel tomorrow night. 5 Republican candidates debating. I think it's Haley, Christie, Scott, DeSantis, and I don't know who. Anyway, it doesn't matter. These 5 people are on stage, and you're a panelist. You're conducting the Q&A. What is your economic top question to these 5 Republicans on stage tomorrow?
How do we get Americans back to work? How do we make sure that we have, every American who should be working? There's 5 million males between the ages of 20 and 55 that should be working that are not working. We've got to make sure if we're going to be a productive country, we're going to reduce the deficit. We have to get people back working. How do we do that? Do we cut taxes? Do we, make sure? I'm for work requirements for welfare, but I'd like to see what we're going to do. And then, of course, how about this one? Name 5 federal programs that you would eliminate from the federal budget.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one. I'd love that one. Maybe I can get that question to Hugh Hewitt, who's moderating tomorrow night. Maybe we can get.
Well, remember, by the way, do you remember what that famous moment when I think that question was asked to the governor of Texas? Remember this?
Yeah. Rick Perry.
And he had like a brain fart. And
he had
that
the 3.
To me all the time. He couldn't remember the 3rd one.
Whoops. Yeah, he famously said, "Whoops." Yeah, that pretty well cooked him. He's a good man. That's a shame. Yeah. It does. Thank you, Steve-O. Always a pleasure. You know the jingle, right? For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com. It's true. It really is the best night's sleep in the whole wide world. I've been sleeping on MyPillow 2.0 for the last few weeks, and it is so comfortable. Can I be honest? I didn't really buy the whole Mike Lindell patented adjustable fill thing. I didn't know what that meant, adjustable fill. I was like, yeah, sure. The pillow's going to go flat. It doesn't go flat. You know how you buy a pillow at the store and you're like, oh, that's nice, and you sleep on it for a couple of days? I got a big, fat, heavy head. And all it takes is a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of nights where I get a little warm, and all of a sudden that pillow just, and a couple of weeks my neck is cricked, and it's miserable. I've never had luck with pillows. Well, I tell you, this fill that MyPillow talks about and Mike talks about, it is adjustable, and it constantly stays. You adjust it at night, and your head is like even. It's not like, cranked down. It's like I haven't laid on a pillow night after night for weeks that keeps my head even with my shoulders, but this pillow does. And now, because it's MyPillow 2.0, you say, what makes it more special? Well, they've got a new fabric that dissipates heat and humidity on top of that. So it stays cool all night long. There is no flipping to the cool side of the pillow. The pillow stays cool. So it's that firmness and adjustability that you like, and it's also now cool to the touch. The fabric is soft. It's great. Couple that with the Giza Dream Sheets, the MyPillow body pillow. I feel like I'm sleeping on a cloud every night. I really have slept like a baby lately. Christine loves her MyPillow slippers. I sent my entire Chris Stigall Show team MyPillow travel pillows. Got a dog bed for Eddie and his dog. Dean, my dog, sleeps on a MyPillow dog bed. One of my associate producers is loving his Giza Dream Sheets and the slippers. Look, if you want really high-quality stuff, is it the cheapest? No. I'll just be honest with you. I know some people say, oh, it's expensive. Well, look, it's made in America. It has a 60-day money-back guarantee. It has a 10-year warranty on every single product Mike sells. So it's well made, and he stands behind it. So look, that comes, with a bit of a cost associated with it. It's true. You want something cheap and Chinese? Fine. Now, you're not going to find that at MyPillow. But if you want a really great discount on that, go to MyPillow.com and use my name, Chris Podcast. If you type in Chris Podcast, it lets them know you listen, and I appreciate it. So the promo code is Chris Podcast. That gets you the discount on the stuff. You get a second MyPillow 2.0 if you order one. Chris Podcast is the code at MyPillow.com or call 800-932-5056. Again, folks, I say it with all due respect. I love you. I don't mean to dismiss you. I understand your concern. There is nothing we can do about anything you see today that alarms and upsets you. Today is not the day. Election day is not the day to get angry and indignant about the way your elections are run. Today's not the day. So I'm telling you, if presidential election 2024 is a concern to you, then begin working today to correct the problem next year. Get with your county board of commissioners and you say they're Democrats, I can't. Folks, then move. I don't like, being defeatist and throwing your hands in the air and saying there's nothing I can do, then I don't know what to tell you. Getting mad on election day about the way elections are being run, I don't know what to tell you. There's nothing we can do about that unless you impact change in your community. There cannot be a national discussion about election integrity. It has to be county by county and state by state. That's all I'll tell you.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.